bit of lag, it seems, but hopefully that'll correct itself. Maybe if I make this smaller. Just doing a little warm-up. Is it lagging for other people, and is the sound okay? It's always hard when I adjust my setup to know if I fucked something up or not. Or should we, there, zoom in a little so folks can see it just a little better. Can you guys hear me okay? Sound off in the chat if it's if you can hear me at all. I hope you can. Otherwise, I'm going to be having some awkward conversations. Number 2. I'm just using a fountain pen, by the way, with some calligraphy ink, some diamine ancient copper. One thing I love about this ink, but also something to be very aware of, is that it is super water soluble. So it pretty much just like explodes as soon as you touch it with water, which, if that's your intention, results in some very beautiful marks. That is not what you want if you need things to be water fast at all. That's looking a little too... Hang on. I'm going to adjust the image a little bit. This looks too blown out. It's looking a little better. Okay. Alright, that looks a little better. Cool. Hey, Willie. Can you hear me okay? Let me know. You can probably see my mouth moving, and hopefully you can hear what I'm saying. Awesome. I had trying a little different setup, so I'm not sure. You know, I wasn't sure if it was still working okay or not. I feel like for this kind of stuff, the best setup is probably still using my phone, because I feel like it just gets the crispest lines. Would I ever recommend taking a break from art? No. But I mean, honestly, like, it is such a personal thing. But here's the deal. I've never felt like I needed a break from art. I've always, for me, it's art is my break from everything else. So, which is weird because art is my full-time job at this point. So, yeah, I don't know. I think if you feel like you need a break from art, then you just want to make sure you're clear on why you feel like you need a break and why you do art. Right? If you're not trying to do art to make a living, then sure, take a break. But if you do want to make a living on art, you have to be aware that you're going to be doing art all the time if you are making a living. In which case, if you need breaks, I don't want to say you might want to reassess what you're doing, but because it doesn't have to be that dire, right? And it also depends on how long of a break you're talking, you know? I mean, yeah, there are times I might go a day or two without drawing, but that's about it. And it's rare. And that's enough of a break for me. But, like I say, it's kind of a personal thing. I've never really felt burnt out on art. There are times that I don't have the energy after work to come home and draw my own stuff. But that's because I was just drawing for 10 hours at work. So, you know, that's about the most I get burnt out on. And sometimes I think if we're feeling like we're getting burnt out, sometimes it just is maybe putting too much pressure on ourselves, you know, and it's like not every piece has to be the end-all be-all, and not every piece has to try and be a masterpiece. It's okay to just draw what is fun for you to draw, you know, when you're not doing work stuff. So I think, you know, there are some different ways that you can approach it, depending on your reasons for taking a break. You just have to be careful, because I've known a lot of people that took, I mean, legitimate breaks, like used to draw all the time and then stopped for several years and have never quite been able to get it back as much as they've tried. So, you know, I don't want that to happen to anyone. Okay, a day off. Yes. In fact, I think there are times that it's important to take a day off, but use that day. There are, like I say, there are times I might not draw for a day, but what I might be doing sometimes is researching some stuff or watching videos from very accomplished artists and sort of learning something that maybe I can apply to what I do. I mean, I won't lie, I get a little obsessive with art, and you don't have to be super obsessive. But no, there's nothing wrong with taking a day off. If you're feeling like you're not getting quality work or you're not getting the type of work that you want out there, you just want to make sure you take a hard look at your practices and make sure that you're using that practice time wisely, that you have goals in mind for what you want to achieve with your art. Because that can, sometimes we'll just go on autopilot and we're not really like pushing ourselves hard. We're not pushing ourselves in the right direction, looking at where our work might be weakest and improving that. Looking at what I'll do a lot is I'll be looking at artists that are doing something. Sorry, I'm trying to decide which pen I want to use. They may look similar, but they're two different pens. But what I'll do often is I'll look at artists that are already doing something similar to me, making the same kinds of choices that I would make, but are perhaps doing it better, and just seeing like where they're doing it better and why do I like their stuff more. And it's not trying to copy them, it's just trying to understand why they make the choices they make. And so then hopefully I can do a better job on my end. Hang on, I want to create some originals for Lightbox Expo, little 5x7s, so I've got this little window here. And this way I have a little template to work in. And I forgot what I was saying. But I mean, it can get frustrating, I'm actually kind of coming up against this sort of, I don't know, barrier in a way right now that's where I kind of, I don't know, there's something that I'm feeling is lacking a little bit, and it's not lacking, I shouldn't say that it's lacking in my work, it's just where I really want to push it to the next level, and I'm not entirely sure how to do that, because a lot of it just comes down to changing the feeling in my art, in my marks, and it's a little like ambiguous, I guess. And it's a hard one to consciously work on, because I don't have a clear roadmap on how to do that. I think that's one of the reasons I've been kind of playing around with some sort of water type mediums where you have a little less control over it, and so the mark making can become a little more accidental, and I don't know, I'm really enjoying that personally. And I think partly because at work, things have to get so exact and precise. I have to get the likeness on actors and stuff if I'm doing sketches or illustrations for movie posters, and so we do get into like things having to be very precise. So it's kind of nice on my own time to sort of relinquish a little bit of that control, and not worry so much about it. So but there's also nothing wrong, I think, with feeling a little bit like your stuff isn't quite where you want it to be. Sometimes it's just you might just be kind of in a plateau period where it's more about practicing the things you are good at and getting better at those, and then oftentimes that'll kind of free up a bit of, I don't know, brain power or something to start to more clearly see what you then need to work on. That's often what I'll do. If I feel like I am in a plateau and I'm not really getting better, or at least, it feels like I'm not really getting better, then I'll just focus on the stuff I know I can do well and just get better at doing those. And then usually I'll kind of break out of that plateau, and be able to see like what other shit I need to work on. Wings. One thing I love about this technique is I can be a little, I don't want to say messy, because it's not really that. I'm not like, you still want it to be kind of pleasant to look at, but what I love is I can do these kinds of almost just, it would feel like noise lines, because I'm going to bring the water in, and then a lot of those will disappear, and I'll just end up with some nice like watery graphic shapes, and then I can come back in again and do more definitive lines. It's a very forgiving technique as long as you don't have crazy expectations, sort of. That's not entirely true. Because you could obviously, like, you could control this quite a bit too if you wanted to. Like I said, I'm kind of enjoying relinquishing control How would I go about practicing? I think honestly that's hard to say without kind of knowing where you stand in your art development. Um, I think if you feel like your art is just not where you want it to be, then mostly you're gonna want to kind of look at where is it that you want it to be, you know. Two, why do you think it's not where you want it to be? And we have to be very honest with ourselves. We can't, like, you can fib and do all that stuff with other people. There are times we always have to, like, talk ourselves up a little bit to maybe to get the right gig or whatever, but with ourselves we have to be kind of brutally honest. And you don't want to bring yourself down and just be like, oh, everyone else thinks I'm cool but I think I suck. You don't, hopefully you like some of what you do. Latch onto that. Do it better if you can. Work on doing it better. But really, like, take a hard look and you don't have to tell anybody else what it is. I'm wondering, I'm not out of ink on this one, am I? Hang on. I am not out of ink. Why did that dry up? That's what our water is for. Yeah, you want to be just very honest about what is and isn't working in your stuff. Whether that means looking at some other people, and like I say, you don't have to tell anybody else who you think is better than you are, or who you think is doing something better than you are. But if you know that, at least, like, take a good look at them and see why you think they're doing it better. Why is their stuff appealing to you more? Almost none of us are working in a vacuum. We didn't develop whatever style we have in a vacuum. It's generally going to be a culmination of everything we've looked at, right? Everything that's influenced us and appealed to us. So I don't know. I think sometimes people get a little too concerned with, like, I don't want to look like this person. I don't want to look like that person. It's like we all have our own experiences in life, and like, you have to very consciously try to rip somebody off in order to actually look like that person. And who cares if people can see some influences in your work? I don't think there was a great artist ever in history that was not influenced by someone else, oftentimes contemporaries. So, I think some of that is okay. And sometimes, honestly, if you're not feeling your work, in terms of practicing and how to practice and what to practice, sometimes it helps just to switch mediums. Get out of what you're comfortable with and pick something up that's going to force you to make some different kinds of marks and different kinds of choices. That'll help you kind of understand your own work a little better. I think variety in art tools is pretty important, and it goes a very long way toward our growth as artists. Yes, you want to practice the things that you are going to be using most often for work, and make sure you are proficient at those and you're constantly getting better. But sometimes that might mean, like, I do a lot of pencil at work, but there are times that after using pencils for a while, I'll find I'm getting too finicky and making too many marks, and things are getting kind of noisy and not so pleasant to look at. In which case, on my own time, I'll start to pick up more pen again, just because it forces me to make direct marks and concise choices, which then bleeds back into my pencil work, and then my pencil marks become a little more direct and confident, and more pleasant to look at. So I think that variety is pretty important. It's pretty crucial. Now I have the benefit of, essentially drawing and painting for a living at work, and on top of that, because I do stuff for movie posters, I end up, having to draw and paint things that I would never normally tackle on my own time. So I get to kind of broaden my visual library just by default. But if that's not the setup you have, then that's the other thing, is you want to also try tackling subject matter that's out of your comfort zone, from reference, so that you can start to broaden your shapes and your shape language and all that stuff, because that'll help kind of break you out of your own mold a bit. One of the things I love about this pen is that I can just turn it over and start to get some much broader marks with it. Which is a lot of fun. It's important, I think, when we're doing this stuff, to just kind of see how much we can vary our mark making. Within reason. You don't want it to be all over the place and ridiculous. Although Topies somehow got away with that. I swear, that guy must have set some kind of a record for the amount of different marks you can fit into one image. And yet his stuff was still amazing and cohesive. That's called composition. I'm gonna swap pens anyway. So this other pen, little different nib. I can't really turn it over and do broad marks, but it does get a wider variety of line weight because it has a little more flex to the nib. which is awesome. Not cheap, by the way. I'm not using cheap pens right now, and I apologize. But you could also use a normal like steel nib, like a G nib or something, and get nice line variety. I love not having to dip the pen all the time. However, if I was gonna do like India ink, then yeah, I would break out the G nib. Because otherwise it would just dry up in here and fuck up my expensive fountain pen. And that would not be fun. I would be very sad. The other thing, let's see, where did my... hang on. I'm gonna grab a brush pen here. So the other thing I did was I put this same ink into a brush pen. Again, variety of marks. It's a good thing. And it is hard to beat a brush pen for line quality. One of the big differences with this ink as opposed to, you know, a normal kind of brush pen ink is it's much more watery, so it's a little harder if you want to get the dry marks. This ink isn't the best for that. But if you like the wet watermarks with those cool watermark edges, then this ink is fantastic. And it's a diamine ancient copper, which I have somewhere and I'm not sure where. But I absolutely love this ink. Makes me happy. It's just subtle, kind of. It should. Should have erased that before I did it. Because once you run water over the graphite, it just fixes it to the paper. but at least the frame will kind of cover that anyway, so it doesn't matter. I hadn't thought of it as a face, but it could be. It's whatever you want it to be. There are times that I like to just kind of indicate and let some organic shapes happen. I've always enjoyed that sort of play between artist and viewer. I think there are times that obviously you want to be very prescriptive as an artist, and then other times where I think it's better to just let the imagination do its thing. So let's see how this guy... this guy would look. Yeah. It creates kind of a fun composition. I ain't mad at it. Cool. Just want to let some of that stuff dry a little bit before I flip the page. Or maybe... let's try a little watercolor. How about that? Let's move this shit over. Of course, then there's always the question: what do we have? Okay, we've got some brown ink. With watercolor, it's always good to decide what kind of lines you want to do. I just need to make sure this ink is well stirred. If you want to do, some kind of ink lines, you want to make sure you have waterproof ink, obviously. Or you can do pencils, do your watercolor, and then do ink lines on top of that if it's not a waterproof ink. I've done that with my fountain pens because I love the line quality I get with it. So that can be fun. But we'll do some India ink lines. In which case, I'll usually keep. You probably cannot even see this pencil right now. Yeah, hi the Jaybird. I agree that a lot of abstract artists use that too much, and I don't condone that kind of up to the imagination art. I know you guys can probably barely see these pencils. I'll try and do them a little darker without digging in too much. But I'm going to keep these loose, so they'll be done pretty quick, and I'll get right into the inks. I tend to leave a lot of the detail work for the inks. I like to keep my pencils really loose. Otherwise, I'll get bored. If I do a really tight pencil drawing, then I don't, like, why the hell should I ink it? I just did the drawing. I don't want to feel like I drew it twice. So it's kind of been my inking MO for a long time. It was also like, you know, as scanners and stuff got better, it got to the point where your pencils could become your ink lines if you're coloring digitally, you know. And even in watercolor, you could do dark pencil lines and, you know, keep it that way. Cool. I'm never quite sure if, like, these things will be, you know, too light, especially because I'm only using a B pencil, which I never do. I almost always just stick with a, if I'm doing graphite lines, I stick with like a 2B or a 3B most of the time. But oh, little pixies, little pixies. I don't know why they're fun to draw. I feel like they're kind of hard to mess up. You know, you can kind of just have fun with some natural shapes and stuff, and I don't know. You know, get some flowers in their hair and just keep everything kind of organic and loose, and of course I know live streaming on Twitch, I gotta be careful about, you know, showing any naughty bits, which is too bad because they shouldn't be viewed that way, but what are you gonna do? Twitch needs to work on its guidelines when it comes to art. Sometimes I will, and I just don't really care, but because I'm not gonna do like really inappropriate shit. I'm not drawing porn on Twitch. I could, but I don't. And we can also always, like, you know, light it accordingly so that maybe we get a little more silhouette action happening so that it acts as like a nice designy sensor. About her, she's looking way too ripped. Which is weird. Which I don't mind. Totally don't mind. When they're like a warrior type of character, but I don't necessarily want that. So yeah, how would that? I don't necessarily want that for a little pixie. With hands, silhouette is almost more important than anything else. If you can get the silhouette to look right, then people generally won't question the rest of it. Yeah, fuck it. Let's give her a little dress. I'm not feeling those hands, so give her a little dress. So any Twitch mods can rest easy. I don't even know how the moderation stuff works on Twitch, really. Like, I can't imagine they have people, like, watching every single Twitch stream, because that would just be ridiculous. But I love the idea of someone just sitting there waiting with, like, their hand hovering above a button. And now they don't have to. Alright. Let's do some inks. Inks. I am using, this is Dr. P.H. Martin's brown India ink, which I love. Especially with the way I like to watercolor. I'm actually going to move my water over. I don't like to render the hell out of stuff in my watercolors. So I like to, let the ink kind of do some heavy lifting, I guess. So I'm just using a G-nib here that I've filed down a little bit on a sharpening stone, just to get a little more flex and a little more of a point on it. I like having that line variety, and it's G-nib straight out of the box didn't quite get that for me, so. Yeah, I don't really think there's anything naughty about a body, personally. I never adhered to that. I can understand if people don't want gratuitous sex and stuff on, on a public forum. Though I do think that's better than gratuitous violence. But I never understood why just straight non-sexual nudity was a bad thing. I always felt like that spoke more to other people's self-consciousness. which case they should get over it, because nudity is kind of the most natural state of being. And there aren't really people that can argue against that. They can certainly try, but by the way, I'm working on Saunders Waterford hot press paper. Not their bright white. They have a bright white hot press, but I don't think this is a bright white. Although it's totally possible that it is. I absolutely love this watercolor paper. It holds moisture for a really long time compared to like Arches, which I find dries out fairly quick. Whereas this one, once you start painting, yeah, it really traps the moisture and you can kind of push stuff around a bit longer, I feel. So really dig this stuff. Saunders Waterford paper. It's made by St. Cuthbert's Mills. St. Cuthbert's Mill out in England, I believe. They do really great stuff. The other thing that's awesome is that it does not buckle as much as other watercolor papers do. So you can actually work on this stuff and like barely tape it down. You don't have to go crazy mounting it onto a board in order to paint, because it'll dry back pretty flat. So for anyone that likes to do watercolor, Saunders Waterford. They do a hot press, they do cold press. They even do a rough press, which is a little too rough for me. But it is still a beautiful paper. I have some sheets of it and I have no idea what I'm going to do with them, but I'm sure I'll use them eventually. Yeah, I mean, it is a societal thing. It's like, but if you look at any of the tribal nations, like, nudity is not purely sexual, right? So I don't know, and it's mostly... It's tough because it is mostly a Western construct. Right now, I'm half Indian. Right, my mom is from India. She was raised Hindu, and if you look at a lot of the old, like the ancient Hindu paintings and murals and whatnot that are kind of pre-Western invasion, there was a lot of nudity back then, at least like topless nudity, not full nudity, but you know, and it compared to how it is there now, which there's no way. But it's just kind of sad how those things change and those outlooks change, and this kind of repression gets built into things. I don't like it. It's good every now and then to clean off your nib. What'll happen is ink will start to dry, and then it won't flow off the nib properly. So every now and then you just want to wipe it down. But at the same time, all that being said, I also love drawing clothes. It just, I think with certain types of characters, it doesn't always make sense to, I don't know, have them in clothing, especially things that are more like nature spirits. It just doesn't seem like that's what they would do or even care about. I want her hair to just get kind of cloudy, so I'm not worrying about, defining the entire thing. Nib is getting finicky. That's okay, because we're gonna jump into some watercolors anyway. But first, let's make sure it's dry, and we can erase the pencils where we don't want them. If you do want pencil marks when you're doing watercolor, for those who don't know, all you have to do is just brush water over it, and that'll fix the pencil to the paper. But brush it lightly. It doesn't need, you don't have to scrub it. You just want to make sure you kind of cover the whole thing with water, and that'll fix the pencil to the paper. The other thing you can do, depending on the type of paper you're working on and how you're working, you can also just take the paper with the pencil on it and submerge it in water. Right, so you don't have to worry about like blurring your lines if you brush over them. and that'll fix it to the paper.
Alright, let's do this. Water, where's my water bottle? Here we go. So I just take this wash out, so I'm not going to be using it right now. This is just a little bottle with water that I use to reconstitute some of this stuff. I don't always clean off my palettes. A lot of times there are colors that I can use. But let's do this. I'm gonna move her over a little. Of course, now, usually what I like to do is, you know, do some kind of a wash over the whole thing. Hang on, I'm gonna grab a brush. When you're doing a broad wash, that's where these squirrel mops come in handy, because they just hold a ton of moisture, but they also go to a beautiful point, so you can actually do very detailed work with them even when they're really large. The reason I like to do this, and depending on the school of watercolor that someone adheres to, this is absolutely not the way to do stuff. You know, because some people will say, no, you have to preserve your whites, which you do. Right, if you want to, if you actually are gonna want white in your piece. I don't, and I like the way that this ends up unifying everything. I think it looks a little lighter on the stream. But, you know, you're still getting some of it. We're gonna let that water dry a little bit, so it's gonna be super fun to watch.
Now that's the only thing with this paper, because it does hold moisture so well. When you actually really want it to dry, it might not go as fast as you'd like. But that's okay. You can also take the opportunity to, kind of get in some of the blooms and washes that you might want down the road. It's gonna give her some kind of reddish hair, but of course that's always my default. So let's do something a little different. Not super different. I'm always like, let's not do red hair, let's do purple hair. That's cool. I don't mind. Don't mind. This is going to be cropped off so I can test colors off to the side to see if it's what I want. Alright, let's see how this... Yeah. So this will give me a nice kind of like organic bloom, and then as it dries I'll get into some of the edges a little more. But for now, Weary Warlord. Thank you. Sometimes I'll jump into something and I'm actually not entirely sure where it's gonna go. So it's always nice when it actually kind of works out. So far. That can change with one errant mark. It's funny, every time I try doing something that's more rendered in watercolor, thinking like, no, I wanna give this a shot. I really wanna, just render something out and see what I can get. I never enjoy the results that I get. I love it when other people do it, but for me, I prefer just like kind of looser, direct marks. I don't know. It's just how I work, how I see, I guess. I don't know. I think I want that a little purple. Like when I was really getting into watercolors, the stuff that really kind of stood out to me were like Sargent's watercolors, and like just his sketches. I loved those things. And I think those are kind of what made me want to get into watercolor. So Obviously, there was some kind of aesthetic there that felt right to me, and I like the looseness and directness of his marks. Not that I'm, at Sargent's level by any means, but I can at least claim some inspiration. Him and Arthur Rackham. Rackham would really let all the line work do the heavy lifting, which is cool. And that works for me because I've always been, I've always kind of had this love for drawing. Even though I tend to approach like my pencil drawings more like paintings. But decide. Not sure what color I'm gonna want her dress to be. We won't worry about it yet. We are gonna do get rid of some of this. Actually, better one would be this guy. Soak this stuff up. I want to get into some of the skin tones, and this stuff is just too orangey for that, so I just want to mop it up and get rid of it. By the way, if anyone is wondering about my watercolor palette, they're all Daniel Smith watercolor except for the alizarin crimson, which is Holbein, because I think I didn't see a specific alizarin crimson with Daniel Smith. They have some other kind of crimsons and stuff, but I wanted this one in particular, so that's Holbein. These are all Daniel Smiths. I have a Hansa Yellow Light, Hansa Yellow Medium, I believe, alizarin crimson, Cad Red Light. This is French ultramarine, so a warmer ultramarine. I believe this is cerulean blue, cobalt blue, ultramarine blue. I think these are both neutral tint, separated by pyrrole red, I believe, which is almost like a Cad Red medium. Like it's a pretty true red, though maybe slightly cool. Olive green. It's like a sap green or something. Burnt sienna, burnt umber, yellow ochre, and Indian yellow. Yeah. I finally remembered all of them. Alright, let's see here. I'm just gonna... That's not bad. Alright. Just want this color to bleed a little, so I'm just prepping that. I just wanted that light kind of blush. I don't want to go too crazy on it. I like this slightly kind of aged look. I think because I just love Arthur Rackham's stuff so much, so I don't know. I like kind of just doing these light blushes of color. But of course, then the downside is that they don't pick up as well in the stream. At least looking up there, you can still see it, but there's a little more color. In reality. Let's do this. Take. Might be a little too blue. She looks like those rocket pops. We don't want that. That's better. Better. No rocket pop fairies here. I like to get a little bit of skin variation, and most of the time I'll do it where pick up some of that, kind of where you might get some, you know, blood vessels and stuff closer to the surface. Let's see. I'm just deciding how much. I don't really want to get too into the actual lighting on this, but just for the sake of separation, it's, you know, it can be nice to have some of it in there. I say I don't want to get too crazy with it. Yeah, see, this dress is still a little wet, so I could still blend color in there. That's how long this stuff will trap moisture for. It's pretty impressive and very useful at times. Other times it can just be a pain in the ass. See how she will look. Yeah, should be cute in a frame. I can dig it. I don't mind that. Cool. So I feel like she needs some line work adjustment. Which, if you're gonna do, you do want to make sure that it's dry wherever you're gonna lay the lines down. Otherwise, you might be asking for trouble. And it's just to balance out some things. You know, and I don't mind in areas if the line bleeds a little bit. I'm okay with that. With certain things, I'm really not a perfectionist. With other things, I totally am. But I rarely get so picky with my line work that I like need it to be 100% precise, and I don't enjoy doing that kind of line work personally. There. That feels better. Okay. I'm gonna call that done. I might jump back on a little later with the iPad. I just need to figure out how best to do that. Maybe just with Streamlabs. And we can give that a go a little later. What time is it? 2:39. 2:39. So I'll probably, jump back in around 4 or something. Maybe. I'm not sure. I have so much shit to do. I'm also doing prints. I don't know if anyone's going to Lightbox Expo here in Pasadena. If not, you should, because it'll be dope. I'm getting some prints together. Various prints. Oh, Twitch is not going to like this. Boobies. But yeah, some different prints that I gotta get to. Sorry, Twitch. Don't block me. Don't kill me. Dragon Girl. This one's also going to be my banner. Be really big for people that like line work. And our dear little mermaid. So anyway, I think those are probably the prints I'm going to have at Lightbox Expo. If anyone's going to be there, stop by, say hi. It'll be awesome. Alright. Thanks for joining. I will try and give you guys a heads up on Instagram when I'm going to jump back on, because I don't know exactly what time it'll be. But I'll do my best.